Hello, this is Jennifer, part of the Aginext team, and I'm back again with another keynote from Aginext 2020. We have Portia Tung, who also was our keynote at the first Aginext event, gosh, 5 years ago now, obviously in different circumstances. I was there, it was definitely in person. It was, I believe, one track, and now we have multiple simultaneous tracks plus a lot of activities, but still the keynote is a keynote. And Portia, we're so happy to have you. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. I'm so excited to be able to be part again of Aginext this year. And it's, I think there's a certain quality of the experience that adds to Aginext by being remote, actually. I think it becomes even more important. So yes, delighted to be involved again.
Yeah, you were also a keynote at our suddenly remote version of Aginext almost a year ago when, 2 days before lockdown, we were like, oh, no, we have to have this online now. No one wants in-person conferences. And I think it actually made for a wonderful, unique experience for a talk.
And it was so impressive to see how the team at Aginext and the conference participants really came together to work with it rather than work against it. And it's so funny because I remember when I went to the supermarket not long after lockdown, when people are kind of navigating their way in the aisles, and because you can't quite see faces and people are obviously terrified of being infected by somebody else. There's a lot of stress around. And I remember one of the people who worked there, because I talked to the staff, I think that's not the thing to do. He said to me, a doctor was there, and he said to the other people who were busy playing bumper cars and just being very grumpy with each other, he said, we simply need to learn a new way to move.
We simply need to learn a new way to move.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, that's so profound and so simple in a way, but simple things are never easy, are they? And I think even as we ourselves walk around the aisles these days, have we learned to move differently? Or are we still choosing to be grumpy and, perhaps difficult for whatever reasons, right, when we're out there? And there's so little human contact now. I feel like an obligation to smile to everybody just to share some love,
I find I'm a winker now. I was never a winker before, but I smile and wink because I'm afraid that they're not seeing it above the mask, especially people that work in services, especially like at stores and picking
Yes.
up. I find, hey, how's it going today? How are you today?
Exactly. And the other thing I do is I signal. So I say hello because they might not hear me because of the mask. But actually, people really appreciate when you do a little signal like that. We do it on a bicycle, right? So why not when we're just walking around?
Sadly, not everyone in London does it on a bicycle. I think it needs to be on. But yes, I find I say thank you. I sign thank you because it's a habit I've developed being online.
Oh, that's lovely.
Well, yeah. So I was like, thank you. And I realized it's probably the only word that I know that is the same in both American and British Sign Language because they're very different, interestingly enough. But it's a nice, simple sign that hopefully people don't think is like a more offensive Italian sign that goes quite similar. So tell us a bit about yourself. Obviously, you're the person, like you attract people to come here and people know about Portia Tung, but people that don't, tell us about your backgrounds.
Yeah, so for the last few years now, I've been more concentrated on looking at change and in particular personal change. And this year, I'm speaking on day 2 and the theme is on psychological safety. And I think what's been really interesting for me about that is it's impossible to be safe with others if you're not safe with yourself. So that's kind of the take I'm going to cast on it. And I think that, given the circumstances we're in globally as well, that's the same thing. And I think it's just made it more poignant and more obvious that we spend so much time looking outwards. We don't spend enough time with ourselves, the one person we're going to spend our entire life with, not the one at the altar or several altars later, and that kind of led me to really the personal leadership aspect and really developing a well-rounded person that supports, the playful leadership side. And that's what I've been working on. Yeah.
As a fellow mother on lockdown, with your child at home. How do you handle that? How do you take care of yourself personally and as a leader in your household? And how do you find time and the energy to perform self-care?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we're all human being and we all have a finite amount of energy, and you can increase that or decrease that by exercise and diet and fun things to do. But I think what I found really useful actually is watching my talks with my little girl. And I've given talks as well elsewhere where children and the elderly have been present, and the children after the talks would just recite back the theory because they're like, yeah, this is so obvious, and they know it, and they're there to remind the adults to play. So I think that's something to do perhaps, just as a bit of a warm-up exercise. But certainly, true play is safe play, fair play, and being good sport. So one of the things I make sure I do now is that I get a break. So before I play with anybody or do anything else, I'm going to take a break first. Now, if I hadn't had a break because everyone else had a break whilst I'm doing the cleaning up or something else, and then they're back for more, I'm like, no, there's no play here. I'm going to have my break, but after that, we'll do 10 minutes. How's that? So there's that. So making sure you're not so much topped up, but that you've had a break, a play break of your own. And I would encourage not using a device, because I found myself longing for more contact because of COVID as an external contact. So actually I check my phone more so that I'm more connected to my friends, but actually it just shreds your brain and it's no good for anybody. And I can imagine doing a couple of minutes of, meditation might be difficult for some. So instead of doing that, just find something different to do, but not a device is what I'd suggest.
So reading, goodness.
Yeah,
Like
reading, going out.
Kindle for a lot of people.
Yeah, unfortunately. But why not treat yourself to a book then? And I know we've got environmental issues to consider, but one book is probably okay. Or get or find a book that you reread a book you've already got. There we go. But I think really come off that device because of the way it works, with your brain and your attentional space. And also let your child lead when you play as well. I find that I don't lead enough in the play, but it's taking turns, because actually play is a relationship, it's a dance. So, it's their turn to decide what to play next, and then it's your turn. And that turn base is lovely. And I think it's so vital now, especially with adults who have children in their environment to play, because the children have nobody else. So we're the best they've got. So we're going to have to get good at the task. And so that includes actually sitting down and watching their favorite cartoon with them. So what I'll say to my daughter is, okay, Teen Titans is your favorite. How about you choose 3 of your favorite bestest ones, and then we'll watch those together, or Horrible Histories. And it's so lovely because it becomes a way of gift giving for them. So they'll select the episodes probably that they enjoy, but they'll think about you too. And it's just so lovely to be able to see their inner selves externalized in that way, and I think that's it recharges everybody.
Great. And how does this translate to leadership and management in the workplace?
Yeah, I think if we look at, what leadership really is, it's about recognizing how good you're at planning and estimating and all that good stuff, but also about managing, your emotions and your energy levels. And I think people get into dead ends or unable to come up with solutions, or say things like, don't bring me problems, bring me in solutions. I mean that's not exactly collaborative, is it? But they get stressed out because they have already exceeded their own work in progress limit. So as a leader, and I believe everyone is a leader. Why wouldn't we be? We have this gift of life, so we're all responsible for that. Is to just figure out what makes you tick, what you need, what breaks you need. And certainly having breaks between meetings is a very sensible thing to do. And just find a way of doing that, and be creative, because you might find that actually, okay, it's going to take me roughly an hour to do that piece of work. But I know I feel better after I've had a bit of a run, right? So just go for a quick run and then come back and do that work. You don't have to feel guilty for having done that, because your workplace hopefully is paying for not your time, because that would be a prison sentence. They're paying for outcome and the value you deliver, right? And if that isn't the case, then it's really important to explore that with your company and see how they can become, more value-based.
I think one of the positive things that have come out of COVID is not the burnout that it created, but the openness in which we can start speaking about burnout and psychological safety. I definitely see no one disconnects anymore. And a lot of people don't understand asynchronous communication and think, oh, I have to respond to that right away. When that's the great part, that we're all distributed now and we can communicate asynchronously, that no one usually expects that you're going to respond right away. And you just want to leave a note and you can talk later when you have the time to do it. Or maybe people should be logging off Slack more, or it's Microsoft Teams more, because it's constantly on, isn't it? Because people might be playing the game of anything.
And I think so much of work stress is because we all of a sudden realize that we needed something from someone yesterday. So therefore now we're chasing them. But if we were a bit more mindful, and this is again about your personal leadership, you were more organized and you did more planning and you didn't, top yourself up to exceed your WIP limit by, ×2 every day, then you would reduce the load on everyone else's plate. So think of it as a public service. And therefore your break is a public service because it improves everybody else's life as well. And I think that's really the key thing. Yeah.
At our other conference, Agile Tour London, in this past October, Mary Poppendick was talking about how, and I actually wrote a whole very exceedingly popular article about it, how she's like, you should just burn your backlog. She doesn't agree with backlogs. You shouldn't be planning more than 1 to 2 months in advance. You shouldn't be agreeing to more work than you can handle. Each engineer, each person in whatever job they're in knows how much work they can accomplish. You shouldn't say you're going to do more. It doesn't help anyone because then you're not going to deliver it anyway. It's yes, and you'll get it in the next 3 weeks, or it's no. So you don't have this burden of constant to do. And you're also focusing on the now and focusing on what you can do right now to solve customer needs or whoever your target is in the tech space. But in general, I thought that was I don't think she realized how mindful that technique was, to just not have a backlog all the time, stressing your team.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's about burning your backlog or if it's just taking more breaks and building that into your work. Because, whenever I always listen out to words like must or should, right? Oh, you should do this. Well, parents say that a lot, don't they? But do we really need to? And managers do this too, right? So it's just a case of, well, for some people it might work. Like if the backlog, they're product owner and the backlog is their thing, to ask them to then burn it can be disrespectful or stressful for them. But if they're happy to do it, knowing the understanding is that, the brakes are built in, use velocity or whatever else to pace, then I think it works.
Tell us about your coaching. You're doing a lot of coaching lately around systems and leadership or playful leadership. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So for me, 2020 and also this year really is about the idea of systemic coaching and really coaching constellations. I have been trained by John Whittington, and the idea is to understand that each system has certain rules around it and boundaries, and to recognize that we're part of the system. Now, you could say, well, Portia, that all sounds a bit like lean thinking and systems thinking, and we all know that. But the thing is, how many of us do it? How many of us really understand it? Because if we did, the first system we would look at is our own.
What does that mean, like for someone that's new to these concepts, and how do you look inward to your own systems?
Yeah.
And we're not talking like the bottom.
System or, yeah, I mean, here I would say it's probably more about your own psychological system and the way you are as a person, but that transfers and translates to organizations as well, right? Because it ultimately affects your relationships between yourself and others in an organization, right? So when we come into an organization, let's say that's a system of its own, there are not laws, but there are rules that guide the behavior. The idea of time, recognizing that people who've been in service for longer than others should be respected and given their place. And in fact, everyone has a place in that system, but very often we might exclude people because of ego or misunderstanding or whatever, and that really causes an imbalance in the system, and it causes it to become entangled. So the idea is that, well, have a think about your own relationship with yourself as you would your relationship with, say, maybe a troublesome colleague, and likewise a colleague you particularly enjoy the company of, and just have a reflection of that, and how is that reflected elsewhere in your life? What is it that works, and what is it that could be better or improved? And really just thinking holistically in that way. I found it very tangible and very visceral as well, because you could use different ways of mapping those relationships. So it's not just in your head, it's not necessarily just on paper.
And then you are providing this coaching to the leadership.
And most of
coaching courses, or you're coaching directly the leaders, or both, or
most of the time now I tend to work with CEOs, CEO minus 2s, 3s, because I always had this theory that it's great to have agile coaching in a company, but it's not enough. It hits the middle and doesn't quite spread, and it's rare for true agile leadership to come from the top. So I think providing that coaching gives you a true kind of vertical slice of change through an organization. So yes, it's leadership and executive coaching I do alongside my agile coaching. But there is something else I do, of course, and that's play coaching, and that's looking at play science. And really, play science is a mashup of all the different sciences, and even the arts, they're not sciences, to look at how people can flourish and be, better versions of themselves. So I work with individuals to explore that as well. And that is another way to work on your own system. Because actually, very often when people feel so stressed at work, we talk about, resilience and all this. But it's like, well, you would get resilience as part of play if you played enough. The reason you get into those situations is because you've lost sight of that, and, self-care and all that stuff, you've kind of abandoned it.
Can you give an example of grown-up play for people that have lost the way and forgotten? They're, in like the movie Hook, they're Peter Pan years later.
Oh yes, of course.
How do you play?
Yeah, well, so like I said before, true play is safe play, fair play, and being a good sport. I think having that as just a little checklist is really good, because you need to I would say, I would recommend you feel safe before you go in, right? Even if it's something very trivial, right? But the thing is, if you feel safe, then you're like, okay, I'm good. I know exactly where my boundaries are. And if you don't, then that's something to work on. So safe play. Fair play is making sure you're playing on your terms as well as theirs. So for example, there's only so many hours of Sylvanian family and this whole kind of dolly things you could play with in the day. So if you know that is the case, then you let your child know, or you let your colleagues know, I can only talk about the backlog for an hour a day, because otherwise it's just soul destroying or whatever, right? True play is safe play, fair play, and then being a good sport. So it's not about competition, but it's about testing yourself. So I think do something that scares you, one thing that scares you every day. So that's what I would suggest. Put yourself in a strange, environment. Now that might be, for me yesterday, is I went around the supermarket aisles in the opposite way.
Ooh.
Now, what's that?
Did you learn from that or find from that?
Well, you're busy kind of reprogramming your brain and your neurons. You give them something different. You meet different people on the way, because others who might go at the same time usually normally follow the same path. And as we, tread over the same paths all the time, that our brains become bored, right? And that's when they stagnate. But our brain loves surprises, and we don't have to wait till Christmas or wait till COVID. So that's a good way to do that. You could ask your spouse or someone you're in the same house with for a book, for example, a recommendation of something to do. and then actually do it, surprise them if nothing else. But I would say true play is really about having fun, but it's also taking a risk, because you feel amazing afterwards. So for me, it's, you know, going out for on the bike and maybe taking a route or doing something, you know, not quite any wheelies or stuff like that, but, you know, something that scares you, that might risk you falling off, but not obviously getting injured, so you could get a hospital. But, you know, safe play. But yeah, just taking a chance and doing something different, but have fun. That's what I would say. Have fun.
So besides shopping in different routes and life and work, what are you working on right now?
So thanks to COVID having been stretched out for quite as long as it has, I've decided to take the School of Play online, because I do prefer in-person play. But you know what? Remote play brings with it all sorts of different qualities and opportunities and resources. So I've developed this online play program called the 4 Seasons of Play. And the idea is that we are all different people at different moments, at different times of the year. And if we could evolve and change with the season and acknowledge where we are within ourselves and our relationship with play, then that would be a really good way to grow for the year. So next week, we're kicking off with a session on creating your annual plan, which is a lot of fun, and it's not painful, and some people think it's cheating, but I'm like, no, it's okay for planning to be fun, and for there to be
We need this to look forward to right now. People get so obsessed that they can't plan vacations right now. Maybe they can plan, even as far as we have a meal kit now that comes 3 days a week, which we enjoy going through the process of planning. So that
Right,
helps try new food, and then we're
exactly.
planning types of meals. So
Yeah.
we need planning right now, or else it feels very much the same, and kind of the world is not a joyful place.
Yeah. And the idea is, you know, instead of carpe diem, seizing the day, it's about carpe annum, seizing the year. And we've got other courses throughout the year to look at, you know, increasing your creativity, becoming more emotionally attuned with yourself and the people around you. And it's so much fun, Jennifer, preparing for these courses. And I'm not going to, you know, give away too much. But yeah, I'm confident that they will achieve the transformative results that or outcomes that people look for when we meet in person as well. So they'll complement the in-person ones when we come back online for those, as it were. But yeah, they will happen quarterly.
And they'll be for the individual, or for a
Yeah,
certain
so I'm
or
offering them as public courses so individuals can come, but actually you could send your team along. Why not? I think the nice thing with it being a public course is it means you get to meet other people as well. But I'm offering it to companies who've been in touch to look at developing that playful leadership side of their teams, but also their leaders internally. So it just depends on, you know, what floats your boat.
but it sounds like it's really good for the individual, whether they're part of a team or not. So that sounds great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. As always, Portia, we are so happy to have you as part of the Aginext community. Everyone that's listening, I hope you'll see Portia. We are having the Aginext conference the 17th to 19th of March. It'll be starting in abbreviated days, the afternoons in London time. Portia's ending the day 2. The idea is that we're able to be more inclusive of people, and that's a wonderful thing, just like offering your courses online. Both Portia's expertise and I hope our experiences we create are about like the ANSI webinar. They're about experiential learning, and I think these are shared values. That's why Portia and the Aginext community mesh so well. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing you talk and
yeah,
talking with you.
stay safe, everyone, and have fun.